Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to welcome you to Inproforum 2025. It is our great pleasure to open the 19th edition of this well-established conference, which each year connects the world of science with practice and creates space for dialogue between academia and the real economy. The aim of this year's conference is to bring together experts from the academic, business, and public sectors to jointly explore new approaches to economic resilience, strategic management, and sustainable development, especially in these uncertain times we are all experiencing. This year's Inproforum focuses on key topics of contemporary relevance, the latest and future trends and challenges in retail, international trade, marketing, and tourism, change and innovation management, resilient regions, sustainability under the pressure of global challenges and uncertainty, finance, accounting, and taxation, agricultural economics, new challenges and opportunities, economic resilience from macroeconomic and microeconomic perspectives. These conference sections reflect current trends, offer analytical perspectives on today's challenges, and present practical solutions for managing economic pressure at local, national, and global levels. The conference would not be possible without the organizing committee, led by Vice Dean Mr. Rolinik, who deserves our sincere thanks for his excellent preparation and coordination of the entire event. Inproforum 2025 is held under the auspices of the Dean of the Faculty of Economics. The scientific committee of the conference consists of distinguished academics from both Czech and international institutions, ensuring a high professional standard of all contributions. The linguistic and academic quality of the conference is supervised by Vice Dean Mr. Kadlik and his team, while the entire event is prepared, documented, and presented with the support of the Development and PR Department under Vice Dean Ms. Majikova and her team. The 19th edition of Inproforum will begin with plenary lectures, followed by a lunch break, and will continue with section sessions in the afternoon. We are deeply honored to welcome two distinguished keynote speakers. Dr. Anthony Losasso, from DePaul University in Chicago, has prepared a lecture about intermediation in health insurance markets. Dr. Losasso specializes in health economics, focusing on health insurance markets and the impact of policy reforms on healthcare accessibility. Associate Professor Robin Mayale, from Research Institute for Labor and Social Affairs in Czech Republic, will talk about myths of public finance consolidation. Mr. Mayale's research focuses on macroeconomic policy, behavioral economics, and the sustainability of public finance systems. So please, make yourselves comfortable. The 19th Annual Inproforum Conference is about to begin. Thank you for joining us, and we wish you an inspiring and rewarding day, full of insightful discussions and new knowledge. Welcome to Inproforum 2025. Before we begin, let us hear a welcome address from the Rector of the University of South Bohemia, Professor Pavel Kozak.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, it is my great pleasure that today, here at the Faculty of Economics of the University of South Bohemia, we open a space for dialogue between experts, entrepreneurs, and students. Such meetings are a testament to a vibrant academic community, one that is not afraid to share experiences, seek new paths, and inspire one another. The University of South Bohemia has long been built on the values of openness, sustainability, and responsibility. We believe that these very principles are essential not only for the future of research, but also for the healthy development of society as a whole. I wish today's conference an inspiring course, many stimulating discussions, and the creation of new partnerships that will reach far beyond this event.
Skvělý. Děkuji vám. Děkuji vám. So, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in this special role. Thanks to organizers for having me. When I was asked to give a keynote at a conference entitled "Economy Under Pressure," which is happening early in November, I knew from the beginning it will be right after elections. So I was thinking what topic will be interesting, and I wanted to elaborate on the hot topic right after elections and also before elections, which was concerned public finance and all the massive information that we are receiving from media and politicians and some experts as well about public finance, debts, deficits, government budget, and so on. So, firstly, I think that there is a lot of misleading information happening during the discussion. And secondly, I believe that this topic is absolutely crucial for economic development. So that's, with my humble efforts, I wanted to somehow cultivate the debate. Here is today's agenda. I will start with the rationale behind austerity. Then I will move to questions why it has a little sense or no sense, and some social and political consequences of tight fiscal policies, and then final wrap up. So the kickoff for the discussion is that we are supposed to have balanced government and public budgets overall, which means that our revenues and expenditures should be somehow stable, because the disbalance in terms of deficit, of course, it creates a debt burden, and we need to keep even this debt burden. We need to keep our public finance on a sustainable trajectory. So this is the first very simplified version of budget constraint, which is the first equation here, so that we have the debt, which is given primarily by the interest rate on the previous debt, and government spendings, which are the expenditure side of the budget, and taxes, which are the revenue side. Also, the stabilization condition is calibrating the rate of growth, which is G, and interest rate. Therefore, we get the primary balance depending on the situation. If we want to improve the balance, then we under the conditions of R and G, we need to generate surplus. In other situations, where especially when the growth exceeds interest rate, we are allowed to have also primary deficit, and will be still on a sustainable path. So, some proponents of tight fiscal policies, they promote Ricardian equivalence as one of the arguments for a strict fiscal policy, and it is based on households' expectations, so that more strict fiscal policy generates expectations of households that generate better prospects for the economy, so that households and maybe also firms are motivated for consumption and investments. So that in this case, reducing deficit shall not actually undermine the aggregate demand. So that's the idea of Ricardian equivalence. One of the seminal papers in modern economics is Robert J. Barrow, 1974, published in JPE. Then argument, which is not that much argument, it's just like loose association that if households can tighten their belts, then the government can do the same. There is nothing deep in it, so basically analogy between households and government. Another argument could be the confidence and expectations channel, which says that if we have more strict fiscal policy, it will create good expectations. So it is linked to the Ricardian equivalence, which creates credibility on the markets. Then we have lower rates, which will increase private investments. Then we have a higher growth and later on lower debt. So this is based on an idea that strict fiscal policy will create confidence and good expectations for the future. There is also a certain moral aspect for strict fiscal policy, which is a combination of some Protestant ethics and some early capitalist conceptions where investments and the whole progress of society and economy is based on investing from savings. And one of the books which explains this idea is Protestantische Ethik unter Geist des Kapitalismus by Max Weber. So these were arguments why we are supposed to have more strict fiscal policy. We also have arguments against, so that the fiscal policy should have a different approach, or should be approached differently than was presented so far. Yeah, I know it's a scientific conference, but as a keynote speaker, I dare to be a little bit less scientific and more provocative, and my ultimate provocation is that I will spend 5, maybe 10 minutes with kindergarten macroeconomics, and all of you know this is the expenditure method of how to compute national income, and also it gives an idea how we look from the macroeconomic perspective on the demand side of the economy. And both are given as a sum of household consumption, investments, government spendings, and net export as a difference between exports and imports. So, here we go. Let's start with this point, which is a slight negative production gap. Yeah? Because austerity measures usually start in a situation, paradoxically, in the situations where when the economy does not perform well. What do we see? So that we are under the potential product, and we have slightly deflationary pressures in the economy. Then what will happen? We have some restrictive fiscal policy, so that G is going down, which will shift the aggregate demand downward to the left. Then we will have a new short-run equilibrium, And we can see that the output gap is even higher, with even higher deflationary pressures. This macroeconomic equilibrium is put in the context with Phillips curves, so that we saw that we were somewhere above some structural unemployment at the beginning, and after a restrictive or some fiscal contraction, we have even higher unemployment rate with deflation or some deflationary pressure, which is the same on this vertical X, also for the graph above. So we see that restrictive fiscal policy leads to lowering the performance of the economy. What will happen with debt or deficit? That was the former situation. You could see that we were in the budget deficit at the beginning. Then we had the fiscal contraction, which means lowering G, and we did it in order to somehow make the balance of the government sector better off, so more balanced. We might expect that if we shift upward this function of the balance of the government sector, that we might generate the surplus in the next stage. But this would happen only under the condition that national income will not change. But as we could see here, of course, we can expect that aggregate demand will remain the same if we just decrease one of its main factors. So that aggregate demand will fall down with the national income. And of course, also this Y0 national income will shift somewhere to the left. So it will shrink, which means that the budget surplus may not happen. Yeah? So this is something, this is the stepping stone for anything, for all the discussions that we could have at the beginning for this issue, something that all undergrad students on econ faculties know very well. Yeah, and what we are asking here, how much we moved to the left, how the economy will, how much the economy will shrink, and that's the question of fiscal multipliers. This is very difficult field for macroeconomists to estimate fiscal multipliers. One of the examples, Olivier Blanchard, one of the most famous macroeconomists in the world, MIT professor and also chief economist at the IMF. Under his supervision, IMF produced absolutely those estimates couldn't be used for a real world, because what they assumed that fiscal multiplier at the time were about 0.5, and what the reality showed was that the multipliers were somewhere between 0.9 and 1.7. So what will happen when you do the fiscal contraction? It was assumed that if you cut $1 from the economy will slow down just 50 cents. But in reality, the economy slowed down by 1.5, for instance. So that your economy is going down more rapidly than your government spendings, which means that indebtedness of the economy is going up. So that you are cutting your expenditures and your indebtedness is rising. Another important point is the fact that when we think about balances, budget balances in the economy, we need to put the discussion into the sectoral balances, so that we have three main sectors: households, firms, and the government. When we think about balancing more the government budget, of course, it will affect the other sectors, firms and households. And we need to think that there is a trade-off of balancing these sectors in the economy. So, and thinking about in this context, that one's deficit is someone else's surplus. The deficit of the government subtract from the economy less than it puts to the economy, which means that the private sectors, household and firms, they are experiencing surplus in this sense. Fiscal restriction means that households and firms might be worse off. So that, of course, that we can, I don't know, in the situation of the Czech Republic and our previous discussion with Vice Dean for Research, of course we can, I don't know, privatize healthcare system or educational system, pension system, and the budget balance of the government will be better off, of course. But who will pay for that? Of course, households, because it will be privatized. So that think about balancing the government budget should be placed also in this sense. Or either we can think about balancing the budget from a perspective of assets. Yeah, if I were the prime minister, I can sell, I don't know, buildings in the center of Prague, and the balance will be better off. But what's the asset of the state? It will go down. So we need to also think in the context of expenses of balancing the government budget. Sometimes it is easy to disprove arguments for strict fiscal policy. One of the intellectual backgrounds in early 2010, if I'm not mistaken, Reinhardt and Rogov paper, which showed that there is a threshold, 90% of debt to GDP ratio, and after reaching that threshold, economies will slow down very much. But then 3 students at University of Massachusetts Amherst, they just take the paper, they revise the data because there were some selective data omissions. They run the code once again, and what will happen if they correct all these mistakes? There was like no threshold from which the governments, from which economies slow down after reaching this 90% of threshold. So also this could be one of the cases. In one of the first slides, I mentioned the analogy with the household, which is a very tricky one. I understand it is, especially when talking to general public, it's appealing to make the connection between how you behave as a household and expect something similar from the government. But the public finance work on different principles. Not that it is different, of course it is, but it works on different principles. One of them is that households do not create money. So that if a household wants to create its, wants to somehow enhance its revenue, you can find another job, or I don't know, something like this. You can be like very qualified for a higher paid job, but then you'll reach a limit. Governments, no, their limit is like pushed somewhere else. They can issue bonds. Could you issue bonds as a household? Not really. So the revenue side is one of the main factors which differentiate, and the possibility to influence the revenue side is one of the key factors for the difference between households and public budgets. Then there is an intertemporality issue, because of course the governments can spend money they don't have yet. So households can do this, but in a very limited way. So that's another aspect which differentiates heavily the thinking about household government analogy. Another thing, what does it mean to have a debt? As a household, it's just your private liability. But when you have a public debt, what is it for the other sectors? It means that those bonds and so on, they are held by especially pension funds, because they need to be very conservative. So what do they purchase on the market? Of course, government bonds or banks. When you have more extensive capital market, also some households and especially wealthy people. So that when you decrease the debt, it also means that you are decreasing the private asset in the economy. So this is the two sides of one coin when thinking about public debt. This is also important point, because household budget, if I decrease my consumption, my expenditures, with my income on the same level, of course my balance will get better. But when a government did the same, we would have different result, because expenditures, public expenditures, are much more related to the revenue of public budgets. So that when I, as a government, and it was shown in the graph a few slides before, cutting public expenditures will necessarily influence your revenue. So that's another thing which is absolutely crucial for understanding the difference. And one other thing is is the horizon, because households, when you have a debt, then you have a finite horizon. When you have a mortgage, it is expected that it should be repaid to a certain age. But in the case of governments, we don't know when the governments will be cancelled, and so that we can think about the governments and their debts in infinite time horizon. So this allows them to roll over the debt infinitely. This is not the case for the households, because our private debts must be repaid. For the governments, they have different treatment. The main criteria is to have it on a stable path, not to be repaid. Yeah? Okay, so confidence argument, that was the one that relates to Ricardian equivalence and the good expectations channel, so that we can have higher consumption, higher investments, and so on. and this will be the result of fiscal restrictions. The matter of fact is that usually in this situation of fiscal restriction, we observe on the market much higher, much higher. Well, the markets are more volatile in this situation, to put it simple, so that we can have also on the job market what is happening when you have fiscal restriction. Job market is going down, which means lowering the wages or like stagnating wages at best. Some job security measures are lowered and so on. So that in this situation, this overweight the effect of some possible optimism about future tax reductions, so that the confidence in the markets in the era of fiscal restrictions, from what we see as measured by risk premia on the bond market or financial asset market, we can see that it is going up. So the confidence is lower than in a normal time. Actually, what do we observe is happening when we have a kind of crisis? What do we do? And this is a famous quote from Mario Draghi, that we will do whatever it takes, including pumping liquidity to the market. So the very opposite that the confidence argument tells us. So that if we want to increase confidence on the market, we usually pump the money in the economy. Exactly the opposite. So this is Eurozone crisis. I'll be very brief, but this is one of the very good empirical examples, and it's almost like a laboratory experiment what we did in Europe. That was exactly the case, that we were in a difficult situation, so that we cut our expenditures. And what will happen? What happened at that time? That our GDPs were going down much more rapidly than the fiscal restriction. So debt to GDP ratios actually rose. This is one of the examples of countries which implemented the most radical austerity policies. So Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. And what do we see? Those austerity measures came into effect somewhere around 2010, and we see that the debt to GDP ratios were rising 5 more years. So it was very ineffective in a sense that, and this is, in my opinion, this is the ultimate measure of what is the stable path. So it's not about deficit. You can generate deficit, and at the end of the year, you can observe lower GDP, lower debt to GDP ratio if you use the deficit with in areas with high fiscal multiplier effect. Yeah. So this is the end of the story. How the indebtedness of countries is evolving over time as a consequence of which policy measures. Of course, fiscal restrictions have also its social and political consequences. My favorite topic, inequality. This is, of course, not neutral, because when you cut public expenditures, Usually it relates to some social security benefits and unemployment benefits, welfare benefits in general, which of course are targeted for mid and lower income households, so that when you cut those expenditures, it immediately affects those middle and income groups. And at the same time, there could be some channels through which we could have or observe asset appreciation, which those assets are, of course, held mostly by the top income social strata, which means that the inequality is rising as a result of restrictive fiscal policy. This is one of the examples, so that we can see that it has also effect on unemployment. So usually it is related to rising unemployment, this fiscal restriction, which is of course not surprising, as we can see here, so that we have a fiscal restriction like this and we are moving out of the structural unemployment, so the unemployment is rising as well. Yeah, and also it was already detected the relation to Gini coefficients, which are rising as well. This is also related to the composition of national income, so that the share of national income that goes to wages usually falls more rapidly than the part of the national income that goes to the capital, which again deepens inequality in society. This study proves that as a result of austerity policies, the income share of the top 10% was rising, and it was at the expense of the bottom 80% of population. Political instability. One of the most recent papers on this issue, published in Review of Economics and Statistics, showed that the European regions which were hit by fiscal austerity were more leaning to some anti-establishment moods and some political fragmentation. We have also historical evidence, so it's not a new topic. Almost 100 years ago, in Germany, that was behind the rise of Nazism, where there was a preceding public policy focused on cuts in public expenditures. This new study from 2020 proves that those areas which were more hit by the austerity were more leaning to Nazis compared to other areas of Germany which were not that affected by austerity policy. And this is an interesting moment, because when we know all this, and of course there is a lot of stuff that we can talk about even more, there is a idea in the population that we should reduce the national debt, and that's the top priority for the whole society. In the Czech Republic, this is from the Czech Republic, published by STEM. And if we have the top priority to reduce a national debt, of course, having in mind the sectoral balances, it means that we want to be worse off. It couldn't be done otherwise. This is something where we don't have explanation why it is like that, because people, I don't know, they want to be like I don't know. Maybe there's a question for the discussion why we want to so severely decrease the national debt. So coming to my conclusions, austerity, the first and prime, the first and foremost goal is to reach more balanced public budgets, but this is not the case. We don't have a case that would prove that cutting public expenditures would somehow lead to more balanced budgets. We could find some examples like Canada in mid-90s. There was like austerity policy accompanied by not falling economy, but of course there are some other factors, opening new markets, boom in the US, and so on. It is undoubtedly proven already that austerity increases both poverty and inequality, and these are the direct consequence of austerity policies. The worst thing is that it doesn't only harm at the moment when the policy is happening, but it affects also the infrastructural spheres like education, healthcare. So it doesn't harm the society only at a time, but also the prospect, the future prospect of society. And social and political unrest. All examples somehow refers to difficult social and political situations which are related to austerity policies. So that's all from my side. I thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. My question is oriented on our economy, Czech Republic. Do you have any advice for Czech Republic?
In this sense, I would completely change the tax system, because the tax system is ineffective in a way that we are directly or indirectly supporting ineffective policies, which doesn't improve neither future investments nor the current consumption. So that I think that one of the first things that has to be done is changing the tax system. And my general idea would be, because when we decompose the national income, we have increasing share of capital and decreasing share of labor. And our tax system is focused on taxing the labor factor. So this is for the future revenue. We have structural budget more than 200 billions. Yes, I think that there has to be a shift from labor to capital taxation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask about the debt servicing costs, because it's quite important issue that actually the costs are burden on the public finance. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's It's definitely a burden, but it's a price that we pay for having the debt. And if we utilize the debt effectively, then it is much easier to pay also the service for the operation of the debt. So, in other words, yeah, I know where you target, because interest rates are higher now than were decades ago. So that we need to take it more seriously. But when you think about the debt as enriching the future, and from a richer future you are repaying the interest, I don't think that. I think that it should be definitely considered, because it's also in the stabilization condition of the debt, of course. But it's more difficult to get more debt in a time of higher interest rates, and that's the.
And the mandatory expenditures,
Yes.
I mean, and quasi-mandatory expenditures. Yes. So then we have these the costs of the debt. So I think that what we need in Czech Republic is to focus the discussion on the prioritizing of the expenditures, what actually it's important for us and what it's not. And then I agree with you that it needs to be rebuilt the tax system.
Yeah.
But still, I think that the burden of the costs of the debt, it's big issue, and we shouldn't forget about it when we create the debt. This is my point.
Yeah, but you know, this is widely discussed, in my opinion. Yeah, you know, the cost of servicing the debt, but when you think about, I don't know, the cost of repo operations of the central bank, these are absolutely not discussed, but they are on the same level. So you know, we have different spheres of economic policy, monetary and fiscal. They have several costs, you know, or a certain cost, and of course that it has to be somehow computed and when thinking about what should happen in the future. And the problem is that interest rates are rising, so that debt servicing is more costly. But when you have like infrastructural deficit, as we do in the Czech Republic, then I think that some of these areas should be somehow developed at any cost, almost. Because that should be the priority. Yeah, let's be brave a little bit.
I would like not to ask questions, but maybe a few comments on your very interesting and inspiring presentation. First, you mentioned the fiscal multipliers, the paper of Rogov. There is some evidence that probably the fiscal multipliers, they differ between recession and growth periods. So in recession periods, they seems to be quite higher, or a bit higher than in growth periods. So that might explain some of the differences you have found in literature. Second thing, I think you touched very interesting topic of actually expansionary consolidations, named by I think Alberto Alessina some years ago. This is still living topic, I think, in literature, and very important. And there is another stream of literature which is called quality of public finance, and that is something which you commented in your conclusion, because the austerity, fiscal consolidation, it influences the structure of public finance either on revenue or expenditure side, and it is connected to quality of public finance, which is very difficult to measure, of course. But we know that what makes difference is the structure of tax system, structure expenditure, the expenditure to expenditure with higher multipliers, and changes in tax systems where the multipliers are lower, of course. So this is something which is worth of attention. Last comment is about the period of debt crisis in Europe. I think you showed that the austerity was a bit harmful, or quite harmful for a number of countries. But if we can look at bond yields, government bond yields, that time and nowadays, there is also a story in this and behind, because we could watch the Greek government bond yields, I don't know, maybe more than 30%. Portugal, later Spain, they soared high. But nowadays, these countries finance themselves cheaper than Czech Republic, with our debt to GDP ratio 43%. so they were able to reduce their financing cost, but with huge cost. And the cost we cannot imagine, and there not being austere before, it was very costly for Greece and for these countries, because it was a great impact on their tax systems, on expenditure, and on the quality of life in these countries. So that's, I think, I would like to add and comment to your very nice presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I very much agree with what you said, and yeah, especially the difference of how big the multipliers are depending on the business cycle. Yeah, we can say that now, when we are roughly around the potential product in the Czech Republic, however, the estimates are difficult as well. Of course, we wouldn't have multipliers of 2 in average for fiscal expenditures. And yeah, about the rest, I agree that the stability of Eurozone was very costly, especially for these southern countries. They paid a lot for having more stabilized economies now, unfortunately. And in my opinion, from a policy perspective, of course we want to stabilize the economies in the long run, but it shouldn't harm the structural backbone of the economy of these countries. What I'm afraid happened in Greece, Spain, Italy for a long time. Italy, it was not only in their case about the great financial crisis 2008 and so on. So, thank you for your comment.
My question concerns President Trump's policy. Yes. Thank you. America first. Do you think that when there will be higher taxes in other countries, for example, in Europe and in other, so it will have only positive or also negative impact on US economy?
What kind of taxes do you mean? Like corporate taxes, so that yeah, it could be difficult, and we see that that some companies, and these are big multinational companies, which are transferring their production or some research centers to the US. Yeah, this could be a threat, and it should be taken into consideration. But in this sense, this is a kind of rat race when we will be lowering our taxes just to attract the capital for higher appreciation. Yeah. And when you think these are like world superpower blocks, Europe, United States, but it doesn't mean that when you have higher taxes that you are less competitive, that you will not attract business from abroad. When we think about Scandinavian countries, they have one of the highest taxes and tax rates, and they are still competitive. And why? Because for the taxes that that the national states have as a revenue, they provide good services. Yeah, they have healthy population, good legal system, educated population. So firms will pay for this, and it's not about like having precarized society and just come here and make a business and employ some thousands of people. I think that this strategy, it really differentiates a really successful countries. I don't have in mind some offshore centers like Ireland or Netherlands, but most of successful countries with good, stable, robust economies, they need to have higher taxes to operate effectively. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. 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 Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this invitation here to meet your faculty, to meet your students. I've had a wonderful time, and it's been a very rewarding experience for me. And I'm happy to share with you some of my research, which I think in contrast to what we just heard, which was very macro-oriented, this is going to be very microeconomic-oriented. So maybe a good balance there, maybe. So I'm going to be talking about intermediation in health insurance markets. And acknowledge my co-authors on this paper. It's work in progress. We are hoping within the next year to have a paper for submission, but sometimes these things take a while. So I would love to get your feedback, and I encourage you to ask any questions. So I need to tell you a little bit about the U.S. health insurance system, so you can understand what I'm talking about when I say intermediation. So in the U.S., most working age people get what we call employer-based health insurance. So the employer contracts with private health insurance companies, and they typically pay a large share of the premium on behalf of their employees. And this, of course, means that, you know, it does imply that if you're not working, it is more challenging to get health insurance coverage. Unlike here in Czech Republic. So each employer now is choosing among these competing private health insurance companies and a great variety of plan designs. So it's not just one plan. Plans have many different characteristics. Health insurance plans have many different characteristics. There can be cost-sharing differences. That's very common. Co-payments, deductibles, co-insurance. These are all ways to, of course, well, we as economists would call this ways to limit moral hazard in consumption. But the choices are complicated, and this is a time-consuming process for any firm to try to sort this out, particularly small firms who can't hire dedicated benefits personnel to help them with this. So what do the employers do? Well, just a little more background here. Employer-sponsored health insurance, about half the population, 160 million people. We have firms differ widely in the number of insurers that they consider and the generosity of coverage. The employer, not the individual employee, decides which insurers they're going to offer. And so all of this complexity means that there are costs to the employer as they sort through the many different options that they have. And so this creates a demand for expert assistance. So enter what we call health insurance brokers. These are the intermediaries. They help employers decide on the options that they want to offer or that they will offer their employees. So they'll gather the quotes, that is to say, gather the information about cost, gather information around enrollment issues, compliance, lots of paperwork, bureaucratic things that have to go on, and also provide ongoing services to the employers. So it's not just a one-time thing where they help them pick a plan and then they're done. They're usually involved throughout the year. For this service, brokers are paid commissions by the insurers, and it's a percentage of the health insurance premium, a percentage of the cost of the insurance. Typically, employers don't pay the brokers directly, so it comes out of the premium that they're paying for their health insurance. So why should we care about this? On the one hand, brokers provide this service of reducing search and transaction costs for the employer. And that's a good thing. They're providing a service. The employers are willingly engaging them to help them select their plans that they'll offer to their employees. But the presence of these commissions does introduce a potential conflict of interest. And this could be invisible to the employer. So a broker may steer their client towards the insurer that pays the highest commission. And that can distort the choices that the employers actually wind up choosing. And I'll just say that there is a lot of regulatory attention in the United States towards brokers generally, in the insurance realm. And I think we all know that brokers exist in many other facets of a modern economy as well. There are real estate brokers. Maybe you have those here, probably. And they aid in the buying and selling of homes, right? But they take a commission. At least in the U.S. they do. So some states, in fact, have enacted laws to limit the commissions for these private plans. So it is an active area of policy interest. So what we're interested in here is, how do brokers influence the employer's choices among insurers? And then how is competition and prices of insurance affected by the influence of brokers? And ultimately, we want to get to a point where we can talk about an optimal way to regulate broker compensation. There may not be one, because as I'm going to try to convince you, there will be a trade-off here. And so as a little bit of foreshadowing, the trade-off is going to be that higher commissions increase steering, but they also increase competition among insurers. And I'll show you what I mean with a little example here. We're going to focus on a very rich set of data for New York State. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I won't get into too much detail on the data. So the empirical setting, this is a very simple kind of diagram of the role of brokers. So you've got your employer here, and in this simple world, there's only two insurers to pick from, and it just so happens, for whatever reason, the employer prefers insurer A. Okay? So in a frictionless world, the employer will go ahead and contract with insurer A. In a world with frictions, inertia, hassle costs, complexity, all of those factors I talked about, it's possible that the employer chooses insurer B instead. So enter the broker. So the broker directly works with the employer, and so this is going to reduce the hassle cost and ideally will improve the match quality. The employer still prefers insurer A, and the broker goes ahead and helps the employer contract with insurer A. So improve match quality. But now I threw in some Greek letters there to indicate commission. So these gammas indicate a commission. And in this case, it turns out that the commission paid by insurer B is higher than the commission paid by insurer A. So we get steering. And so these commissions are set for the market. So the insurer sets them, and brokers, by and large, are what I guess we would call price takers in this sense. And so they're generally not negotiating their own commission. So we will get a steering distortion here, and the broker will steer them towards insurer B. And that would not be a good outcome. But the second piece, and this is pretty common. I mean, well, I should say, it's this phenomenon of broker steering is something that has been looked at in financial markets where you have financial brokers. And so that we don't think is necessarily novel here, although I will say people haven't looked at it in the context of brokers for employer-sponsored health insurance. But now I'm going to argue that the presence of selective contracting, and by that I mean brokers don't contract with all insurers in the market. So here I'm showing, well, the broker does in fact contract with both the insurers in this market. But it could be the case that the broker only contracts with insurer A. And so in that case, you get, in effect, the employer really is only seeing half the market. And insurer A is not directly competing anymore with insurer B. It's been obscured kind of by the contracting relationship. And that allows insurer A to raise its prices. So, and I'll show you some evidence on this, that selective contracting is very common. Very few brokers contract with all the insurers available in New York State, which is our setting. So that creates another type of distortion here, this contracting distortion. And I'll present evidence on, today I'll present you evidence on both the steering distortion and the fact that broker contracting does impact prices for insurance. Okay, so talk a little bit about the data. We got a lot of data from a whole variety of sources. It's not really important where it all came from. Just take my word for it. It took a long time, and it took people, mostly grad students, scraping data from the websites, and also we bought data from various vendors. Okay, so you may be wondering, well, do all employers have to work with brokers? And the answer is no, they don't. Not all employers work with a broker. A bunch of them do. So in our sample, we have 16,000 roughly firms, and 13,000 of them work with a broker. About 3,500 don't work with a broker. So we'll use that. We'll use those observations in our analysis. So these are just the list of insurers that are operating in New York State. The largest is this company, Oxford United. they have about a quarter of the market. They also have the most brokers contracting with them, with 551 brokers. They also have the highest per member premium, too. That's an annual premium, $9,300. And so we don't necessarily want to conclude anything from that, because they may be the most popular because they're good at what they do and people like them. I'm not going to take a stand on that. Okay. Now, I said before, when it came to contracting, that contracting between brokers and insurers was incomplete. And so this figure here on the right, it shows that this is the 10 insurers in the market, and the shaded boxes here indicate what fraction of brokers contract with all 10. And so it's quite small. It's under 5%. Quite a few brokers only contract with one. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's relative, but and the modal broker contracts with about 5. Now, the unshaded box here shows the realized recommendation, the choice of insurer. And so most brokers, even when they contract with 5, most brokers, in the majority of instances, only recommend a single insurer. So it's over 50%, over half. So that's I don't want to conclude anything from that, but that's just interesting descriptive information that contracting is incomplete. Brokers tend to favor specific insurers often. And the figure on the left just shows that these relationships are not static either. So they are changing. While United Oxford has the most brokers, it also has a lot of the light blue here, which is initiate new contracts with brokers, and also terminated contracts with brokers. So this shows that there, over time, and we have about 10 years of data, over time we do see some changes happening in the contracting that goes on between brokers and insurers. Okay, so for the main part of my empirical work, I'm going to show you some evidence that suggests that commissions lead to steering. So first, I just want to show you how the commission works for this particular insurer, Insurer 1, which I don't know why I'm being secretive about that. It's the largest insurer. It's United Oxford. So the broker receives 4% of the premium as their commission for the first 500 enrolled employees. After that, it discreetly drops down to 3%. And so there is you could see there's a kink in the commission schedule right at 500, where it drops a full percentage point. And again, you could do the math in your head with, the kind of money we're talking here, because it's figure roughly about $10,000 a year per person premium, and we're talking 500 people, and you're talking 4% of that. So the brokers are doing okay. That's a big number. I can't do it in my head, but you probably can. So the commissions are non-trivial. Okay, so there's this kink. I hope I've convinced you of that. And so our question then is, well, do we see brokers recommending different insurers for firms just above or below the kink point, the 500 level? And so the answer is, well, yes. It does seem that the insurer one with the 4% premium is more likely to be offered as you get closer to 500. But then when you cross 500, you see that they're less likely to, the brokers are less likely to recommend and the employers are less likely to offer that insurer above 500. So that's, again, more suggestive evidence that the commissions are leading to steerage. We can also look at the premiums of the plans. And here we see that, again, we know the broker tends to recommend different insurers just above the kink point, 500 enrolled employees. But they also, in doing so, they also steer them to more expensive plans for the employers below 500, because the plan premium winds up dropping on a per person level above 500 employees. Again, that's distortionary. That's not necessarily, I mean, we don't want to go too far out, but it's not necessarily operating in the best interests of the employer, the client here. If there's no steerage going on, this should all be smooth across. So we should be seeing nothing across this 500 threshold when we know that there's a big kink in the premium, in the commission schedule. And then finally, the last bit of evidence on steering here is again focused on insurer one, and this is looking at the take-up rate, because, well, I guess this is another sort of nuance of the healthcare system in the United States, which is that you don't have to have insurance. You could just, the employer can offer it to you, and you could say, no, thank you. And so what we see is that take-up rate among employees at these firms tends to be lower, just below the 500 enrolled employee threshold. So again, it speaks to this idea that the brokers may be more influenced by the commission, and they're offering and pushing plans that are not necessarily preferred by the employees of their client firms. Because once you get above 500, well, then the take-up rate begins to go up. And again, I'll remind you that if the brokers are totally, I hesitate to call them altruistic, but if they're totally, if they totally ignore the commission, everything should be smooth across the 500 threshold. Okay. So the second point I wanted to make is that raising commissions, while it does lead to steering, it can broaden insurer-broker networks. Maybe somewhat counterintuitive, but I hope not after I show you this evidence. So this is a different insurer. Insurer 2 changes, well, one thing that's a little different about insurer 2 is that its commission is not a percentage base, it's a per member per month, which again only speaks to the fact that there's a lot of variety in these markets. And so Insurer 2 changes its per member per month commission. And so the question then is, well, you can see below how they changed it. It went from $5, the insurer paid $5 per member per month, all the way up to $18 per member per month. And then a couple years later dropped it back down from 18 to 12. And so what you see then is that when they increased the commission, you saw more brokers contract with that insurer. But then when they lowered it, it drops off again. So the point here is just to say that commissions, if you try to regulate the commission amount, say like, yes, these distortions are bad. We don't like these distortions. So we're going to put a cap on, and this has been done. Some states have done this. We're going to cap commissions. Well, what you might end up doing, despite your good intentions, you might end up narrowing the contracting networks that brokers engage in with insurers. And that can lead to this third distortion here that I'm going to talk about, which is that small contracting networks soften or limit insurer competition. So I'm going to show you a little bit of evidence here, and then I'm going to wrap up. So this is some evidence here suggesting that the annual premiums per enrollees, and this is essentially looking at different parts of New York State where there is variation in the number of insurers in the choice set. So brokers will contract here with 8 to 10 insurers. That's the max, and then versus these 2 to 4. And remember, I told you that 5 was the modal number of insurers in the choice set. And so what you see here is evidence suggesting that the premiums per enrollee are significantly lower in settings where brokers have lots of insurers in their network. So then you might say, well, okay, fine, let's not regulate, let's not cap the commissions. Let's say, let's mandate that all the insurers, all the brokers contract with all the insurers. That begs the question of why don't they contract with all the insurers? And so we, as part of this project, we spoke to brokers. We learned about this market. A broker told us that the majority of what they do is use competition among insurers to create a marketplace for their clients. They view the initial quote that the insurer provides them as just a starting point, and they will play other insurers' quotes. They will play that offer against what other insurers are offering in order to obtain better premiums, better prices for their clients. And at least this one broker said that, well, the optimal number of insurers to contract with, it's not 1 or 2, but it's also not 15. The more you work with, the better your prices, but to a point. And the other thing is just that it's costly to contract with insurers. You have to be onboarded. You have to go through vetting. There's a process to contract with. And so more than likely, we suspect that if a mandate was made that brokers have to contract with all the insurers, you'd probably get a lot of broker exit. And then you could be, again, in trouble because you'll have fewer brokers. And that may not be good for employers. So the story so far is that brokers appear to steer employers towards more expensive products, possibly at the expense of employee preferences. But decreasing commissions reduces the insurer-broker network, which is in effect the sales force, and a reduction in broker-insured networks can lead to higher prices. So this is what I mentioned at the outset, that there's this trade-off between steering, which we don't like, and competition, which we do like, because it leads to lower prices. So we will, in the next phase of this work, specify a model to try to quantify these competing forces and explore different design alternatives and test different models. So just to wrap up then, I hope the insight that I've tried to provide you here is that intermediaries, such as brokers, do play an important role in how markets work. They can improve efficiency and reduce administrative costs, but they can also distort choices when financial incentives are misaligned. In the U.S., this is just repeating what I just said, in the U.S. health insurance market, broker commissions create this trade-off. Higher commissions increase steering, but they increase participation, and then which then in turn leads to competition. We think what we're exploring here actually goes far beyond this sort of very narrow, targeted employer-sponsored health insurance in the U.S., because we think a lot of similar issues arise in finance and real estate and energy, online platforms, and a lot of others. And it speaks all to the challenge of designing regulations that preserve the useful functions of intermediation while at the same time limiting the distortions. So the final takeaway here is that I think understanding intermediary incentives is a key to promoting fair and competitive markets wherever you are. So, thank you. Does it make you want to move to the U.S. and deal with health insurance markets? Intermediaries? Maybe become an intermediary. That's where the real money is. I mean, there's a broader question as to whether this because you have a very different system here. A tax finance system, everybody gets it by virtue of being here. I like to joke that the U.S. actually has all the world's systems in it, because all the way from this sort of very private-oriented system to, in fact, just individuals who go and buy their own health insurance, to systems where the government owns all of the in effect all the means of production, owns the hospitals, and that's the system we have for veterans, the Veterans Administration system, and then for elderly populations we have a publicly financed insurance system, but deals with all privately owned hospitals and physicians. So we have everything, and it all just coexists in a messy, messy world. Well, I do thank you for your time. Oh, yeah, please.
Maybe I have one question. If the number of the brokers is changing in a time, or it's stable?
Is it? There are new brokers entering, and then there are brokers who are leaving, retiring, merging with other brokers. So there is a lot of change going on in the broker market. There are some very large brokers, but many brokers are just like one person in an office, and that's the whole. And that's probably, that one probably just, when that individual retires, it goes away. But there are some very large brokers, too, where there are hundreds or even thousands of brokers nationally. But there is a lot of dynamism in the broker realm. And, if nothing else, I've convinced you that there's some good money to be made and services to be provided. They do speak to our one of the brokers we spoke to. He always worries about losing his clients to other brokers. I think he wakes up in the morning worrying about that, and goes to sleep worrying about that. Well, again, thank you for your attention and your time. It's been a real pleasure being here. And I think I'm the only thing between you and lunch, so.